Welcome on to the next episode of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. My name is Brad Nadalt. We've got the coach Lindsey Parry with us today. And today we are going to be talking some really interesting topics. One being dead butt syndrome. I kid you not, it is a thing. We're also going to be talking about high vertical oscillation and rotation. And I'll be brutally honest, haven't a clue what that is. So that's coming up on today's podcast as well. We're going to talk about the feeling that your fitness is declining. We're going to be looking at swapping out runs for hikes, whole bunch of stuff we need to get to today. Lindsey, as always, great to catch up and some great questions coming through for today's episode. Things well on your end of the world?
Yeah, no complaints here. Busy kids, busy wife, busy me, but we are good.
Excellent stuff. Don't forget, if you have a question you'd like answered on this Q&A episode of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast, the link to submit your questions is in the description. So whatever podcast player you are listening on, or if you are watching this on YouTube, you can click on the link in the description. And while we are talking about YouTube, Linz, this is something that just absolutely boggles my mind. Okay, we're inching towards 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. And I had a look at the analytics. Less than 20% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed to the channel. So I'm going to, before we get into the questions, if you are a regular viewer of this channel, please hit the subscribe button. Help us get to 100,000 subscribers. Gee, I actually couldn't get over that. I was like, holy smokes, we get a lot of views on this channel and no one's actually subscribed. So please hit the subscribe button. All right, Lindsey, I mentioned in that intro that there's something I have no idea about, and this is the question. Okay, it's from Sarah Donnelly. She's in Christchurch, New Zealand. She said, hi, Brad and Lindsey. I've been reviewing some of the running dynamics data from my watch, particularly metrics like vertical oscillation and rotation. I have no idea. I'm sure you're going to inform us, Linz. So I've noticed my values on the higher side, and I'm wondering how much of these, or how much of an impact these numbers really have on running efficiency and performance. Should recreational runners be actively working to improve these types of metrics? And if so, what practical adjustments or drills do you recommend? Thanks so much for your guidance, Linz. I mean, I look at some data I've never heard of, vertical oscillation and rotation. First, what is it? And then to Sarah's question, should we be trying to improve it? And if so, what can we do to improve it?
Yeah. So look, vertical, obviously, I think people can probably work it out. Vertical is up and down, and oscillation is change. So that's the vertical. And now I'm pointing my fingers, and some of you are listening, not watching. So that's not helpful. But it's how high you go up and down. Okay. And we have to have some vertical oscillation.
You're talking your strides, how high, not physically like you climbing mountains.
Sorry. So it's very, very good to stop me right there, Brad. Of course, that is probably the most important. It's the vertical change up and down of your hips. Okay. So it's how high your hips go up in and then come back down in the running stride. Okay. And that will be from your apex, the top point. So when you push off the ground, you will go up. And when you hit the ground, your quads will act as a shock. Quads and glutes will act as shock absorber. And so there will be some down. Okay. So the difference in height between the highest point and the lowest point in your running stride, that's basically the vertical oscillation. Now we need to have some, because when we push, we leave the ground. Okay, so there's going to be some vertical oscillation, but we want the majority of our energy when we push off to be going forward and not up. So it's not ideal to have a high vertical oscillation. Okay, and so if you are at the upper range, that means that you are bounding along a little bit too much. You do want to focus a little bit more on a bit more of a forward lean, a little bit less upright, driving more with your knees forward and not up. So some small little changes there. And then the rotation, actually in some ways more important to me, because, well, it's the same principle. So the rotation is when you are turning with your spine as the axis. So your hips are now rotating. So think of your shoulders going from side or round, coming round and round instead of back and forward. So your torso, your upper body is twisting rather than staying nice and stationary. And when we twist, exactly the same happens. So if we are twisted, then the force that we are generating to go forward is being displaced. And so some of that energy is wasted. So those two things often go hand in hand, to be honest. That very rotational upper body tends to have you leaning slightly further back, and therefore when you push off, you are more inclined to go a little bit more up. And if we can just get you still in the shoulders and at the waist so that you're not turning on that axis, that often can then also help to just reduce that vertical oscillation a little bit. And it's much easier to fix, to be honest, than a very boundy running style. Not always that easy to fix these things because under stress, we kind of revert to type. So what I often tell people to do is just check yourself when you're running up a hill. Because often when we're running up a hill, we put our bodies into a much better position, just a slight forward lean, so that most of the force when we push off is directed backwards and not straight down into the ground. So that should help you then a little bit with that vertical oscillation. And then with the vertical, not the vertical, with the rotation, if you just focus on keeping your shoulders in a T with your pelvis and at 90 degrees, then you will stay much straighter. I don't know if straight is the right word, but there'll be less movements around your spine and you'll keep your torso much stiller.
Super, super interesting. Yeah. First time for me, first time for everything. Question from Callum, Lindsey. Callum's in Edinburgh in Scotland, saying, hi, coach. I'm training for a 10K and it's been going really well so far. On the weekends, I love heading out into the mountains for long hikes, usually around 10 miles with a decent amount of hill climbing. Just wondering, can something like that count as one of my runs in the week, or should I still try and squeeze the runs in and do the hike as an added session on top of the running training?
So it can definitely count as one of your easier, shorter runs. That's no problem, especially because it's a fairly high degree of difficulty hike. I wouldn't replace your long runs with it, though. Even though 16 miles seems like a long way, I would still do my long run, replace that. Similarly, if you've got time, and particularly if you are under the age of 60, you should still be able to do that just as kind of an additional form of cross training, if you like. But once I'm in my 60s, and look, I have to put a number on it, but it's not always just about age. But if you, yeah, I would then look, and that's maybe the line I'd use to where I'd replace rather than have it as additional. But by the same token, you can include it as an extra and just really track how you feel in the weeks that you do hike, and compare that to weeks where you don't hike, and then get a sense of how tired that hike is leaving you or not, and then either leave the run out or keep it in if it's not impacting too badly.
Cool stuff. Great question. Thank you very much for that, Callum. Lindsey, question in from Barbara. Barbara's in Vancouver, in Canada. Barbara's saying, I'm 65, just started running again after being sidelined for a while with something called dead butt syndrome. I had a bit of a giggle when I first read that, but it turns out gluteal amnesia is a thing, okay? It's definitely, it sounds funny, but it's definitely not funny, according to Barbara. So basically, my glutes have stopped firing properly from sitting too much at my desk job, and everything else started overcompensating, led to a mess of hip and leg pain, especially on the right side, and my whole body fell out of alignment. I've been working with a biokineticist twice a week since January, doing treatments with those machines first that activate the muscles, and I slowly started adding in strength and stretching. It's helping, but it's been a long road, and honestly, it's all been pretty pricey too. My main questions are, what should I focus on as I ease back into running? Any guidance on strength or mobility work that actually helps with glute activation? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, so I mean, the hardest part I think is already being addressed, and that's like, can you reactivate your glutes? And even once you can, what will happen is that you will go from having what did you call it, dead butt syndrome, to having lazy butt syndrome, and you'll just have to keep firing it up. So before each training session, you want to activate those glutes, and that's actually easier than you think. Now that you've got them working, got them activated, you can just stand next to a wall, a pole, your car tire, and you just press with resistance away from your body. So you stand up against the wall, and with your leg that is against the wall, you just pulse 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times to the side and slightly back so that you activate that glute. Turn around, do the same thing on the other side, and then your glutes will be activated before you start running, which is super important. And then typically, because they are activated, they'll then do their job through this. Um, once you get to the point where you are now, the strength should get good quite quickly, because we lose less strength than you think, and the deactivation is the bigger problem. But once that muscle is woken up, it will get strong quite quickly. So you should be getting the strength part back relatively quickly, and you've just got to keep reminding it, especially after long periods of sitting and driving. You just really want to activate those glutes before you head out and go for a run. And then it's a question of getting nice and strong, not just in your glutes, getting your quads, hamstrings, glutes really nice and strong to support the rest of your running. And the more that you do that, the better. And of course, every time you strengthen the glute, activate it first, because a lot of these exercises, single leg squats, step ups, all of those can recruit hamstring and quad to help through certain parts of the movement, and protect your quad, your glute, or help your glute out. So always activate the glute before you do whatever the exercise is that you're trying to strengthen it, so that the glute actually fires and works, and then it will get strong quite quickly.
Super interesting. Thank you for that question. On to one from Greg. Lindsey, Greg's 55. He's new to running. He said, I started late last year as part of a bigger effort to take control of my health. And honestly, I am hooked. I absolutely love that. Running in the mornings has been amazing for managing stress and just feeling better overall. I wish I had discovered it earlier. When I first started, I was doing a lot of things that beginners do, running too hard, too often, without really knowing what I was doing. He says my VO2 max actually improved quite a bit early on, but since switching to a more structured and sensible approach, slowing down, taking rest days, longer, easy runs, my watch is showing that my VO2 max and lactate threshold are starting to drop. And he says it's kind of messing with my head. I feel like I'm getting better, able to go longer, feeling less exhausted, but the numbers aren't backing this up. Is this normal? Should I be worried about what the data says? I'd love some reassurance that I'm heading in the right direction.
The short answer is that often the data on those watches just isn't reliable. Okay. And particularly as we get older and we have to have more recovery time built into our weeks, then those watches shout at us that we're being unproductive, that VO2 max is dropping. And it's especially noticeable when we start tapering for a race. Now, I don't know how to build those algorithms differently to take that out, but it's really not good for your confidence when the 2 weeks leading up to the race, your 5K and marathon predictions tank according to your watch. Your VO2 crashes. You get told you're unproductive and lazy. So no, I don't love those metrics on the watch. Having said that, of course, if you've got loads of training data over a very long period of time, when you see things like threshold coming down, that that could tell us that there potentially is like a bit of an imbalance in the plan in terms of, um, maybe you've been doing just a little bit too much of the aerobic work, not enough. It's hard to tell without actually looking at all the training data. So I always look at the stuff, have a look and see, is there a logical reason for why the watch is giving me this data? No, there isn't. Well, I'm just going to ignore it. But oh yeah, actually, it's got a point. I haven't done an interval session for 2 weeks. Oh yeah, training's going well, being consistent, but I am neglecting one aspect of fitness. So that's kind of how I would use it to when I look at those metrics. And then definitely as I go into taper mode, I just pretend there are no metrics.
I love it. Greg, thank you so much for that question. Thanks for being in touch. Lindsey, question. This is also a goodie. We're talking about math training and just sort of how to incorporate other things. So this one is from Thomas Gallagher. Thomas says, I've gotten into indoor cycling recently and he loves using his tack setup, which is brilliant. He says, while I still run, I've been spending a lot more time on the bike lately, and I'm curious about about how this might affect math style training. When I run, I try and keep my heart rate on the lower end, even though I haven't followed a strict math approach. But now I'm thinking more about using math principles combined with an 80-20 style structure, keeping most of my training easy and doing 20% on some hilly routes near me. The thing is, when I'm cycling, my heart rate tends to go above my math zone, even on what feels like an easy ride. Do you think that this might interfere with the benefits I'm trying to get from math style running? Is there room for doing both?
So there is room for doing both. And it's very interesting that you've got a higher heart rate cycling than running, because that is only typical of elite cyclists. So elite cyclists tend to be able to generate higher heart rates at so-called equivalent intensities than running, but almost exclusively beyond or below that, higher heart rates are generated with running than cycling. Okay. So really what I would do is, and look, regardless of which way you are, whether you are a higher running heart rate or a higher cycling heart rate, the reality there is quite simply that we can have different heart rates on different modalities that are stressing the same thing. So the key is to get a heart rate that works for zone 2 or aerobic work on the bike and the run. And as long as you stick to those numbers, you are good. So, doing like a hard 30 to 40-minute ride on the bike will give you a fairly good idea of what your threshold heart rate is. And you just want to be between 75 and 80% of that number. That'll give you your equivalent maffetone type of training on the bike. And then on the run, you could do yourself a nice hard 5K time trial, and that'll help you peg your threshold heart rate on the run. And then you run between 75 and 85% of that. And then that's where you spend 80% of your time, whether it's running or cycling. 80% of your time is spent run in that 75 to 85%, and then the other 25% will be spent doing higher intensity intervals, threshold work, that sort of thing.
Awesome stuff. Geez, bang through those questions today. Short and sweet for this episode of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. Lindsey, as always, thanks for your time. Don't forget, if you have a question you'd like answered here on the podcast, you can click on the link that's in the description on whatever podcast player you're listening on, or on YouTube in the description of the video. The link is there. We do filter video questions to the top of the queue, so we do have quite a long backlog of written questions. So if you would like to jump the queue, make sure you leave us a video question. We look forward to answering that on an upcoming episode of the podcast. As always, great to have you along for the ride. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to catching up again soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.